On our last video, we stopped in Winslow, Arizona in the Petrified Forest before driving US 40 east to Gallup, New Mexico. We got in after dark. We pulled out the slides and set up Nilly, our 2021 Venture Sports Track travel trailer, in the dark in extremely windy conditions. The campgrounds was close to the freeway, the property was backed up against an airport and directly in line with the flight path of the runway. And oh, did I mention there was a railroad track nearby and high winds? So, needless to say, nobody got any sleep that night. We packed up in the morning and we just headed to Albuquerque. Our next stop was in Tigueras, New Mexico. It's kind of east of Albuquerque, almost a suburb. We had barbecue dinner that night and then headed up to the Sandy Mountains to the peak. The Sandy Mountain Range is just east of the city of Albuquerque, and its highest elevation is 10,678 feet. To be able to see the sunset was worth the trip. We got up the next morning and hit the road. Our goal was to make it all the way to Canyon City, Texas. Sure glad we were heading east and not west. The traffic was backed up for miles. Our next stop was Palo Duro Canyon State Park. During our 2020 road trip, Mark and I drove the truck and camper down into the canyon. There is a campground down in the canyon, and it's part of the state park system. The Palo Duro Canyon is located in the Texas Panhandle near the cities of Amarillo and Canyon City. As the second largest canyon in the United States, it is roughly 120 miles long and has an average width of 6 miles, but reaches widths of over 20 miles in some places. Its depth is around 820 feet, but in some places that increases to over 1,000 feet. If comparing this to the Grand Canyon, where only skilled adventurers typically will hike down, you're able to drive your vehicle down in the Palo Duro Canyon, and in the Palo Duro State Park, they offer over 16 different marked trails for hiking. This year we decided to stay up top. We stayed at the Canyon Rim RV Park. It was $43 a night. We noticed our batteries were low when we were setting up, and we still had a long road trip back. And so we decided to run into Canyon City and purchase a couple of brand new batteries so we'd have them for the rest of the trip. It was only after we installed the batteries that we realized our converter breaker had turned off, and the batteries were just low because the converter wasn't charging them. We flipped the breaker on. The crisis was averted, but we'd already spent the money and figured the old batteries were at least a year old, so we kept them anyway. We took one last look at the canyon before packing up and heading out. Our next stop was the Silver Creek RV Resort in Fort Worth, Texas. This RV resort was set up mostly for people who were booking a month or more at a time, but they had a few spots open for those of us who were just stopping by for a couple of days.
Super nice showers and
I don't want to be that guy who goes on YouTube and does campground, restroom, and laundry reviews, but this place definitely had the best facilities we've been to date. So the first morning here in Fort Worth, we of course had to head to the stockyards. Fort Worth Stockyards is a historic district that is located in Fort Worth, Texas, north of the Central Business District. These cattle drives are done twice daily.
Folks, in a few minutes we're going to be having our world famous cattle drive.
Do I get closer?
Twice a day. We don't do it for show. We do it for our legacy, our history. Today you're on the Chisholm Trail. After the Civil War, when the folks came back to Fort Worth, and for the Civil War, I should say, here to Fort Worth, there was no jobs. The only thing we had of value was some cattle. When they went down to Houston, they found over 12.5 million head walking around. The trouble was, they wouldn't worth anything, folks. They were worth maybe $1 to $4 if you were lucky. However, up north, they were desperate for cattle. Their cattle died during the war. What little they had, they used to support the Union troops. They were desperate for cattle, so much so that they would give us $40 to $50 if we moved them all the way from Houston up to Abilene, Kansas, which was about an 800 miles. They would rest them here in this valley. It was lush with grass and water. People would look down from the old Fort location and see 4,000 to 5,000 head of cattle we're standing at today. Fort Worth got its next nickname forevermore is Cowtown. Then in 1902, Swift and Arm decided to move down and build the cleanest, most modern plants in the world. We quadrupled in size. We're now the 13th largest city in the United States. But we never want to forget where we come from, our heritage, so to speak. That's why we tell you today, you're not a tourist, you're a guest. That's why we wave at your neighbor when you come by. So one more time, folks, we want to welcome y'all to Fort Worth, and we definitely want to welcome y'all to the stockyards, and welcome to the Cattle Drive!
We stayed at the stockyards for several hours. We had both lunch and dinner while we were there. This is a highly recommended stop for anybody in the Fort Worth, Texas area. We really enjoyed our stay in the Fort Worth area, and 2 days was definitely not enough. This is a place I think we could spend a week. Just a shout out to all the Buc-ee's that we stopped on along the way. Our next stop was the Boomtown USA RV Resort in Vidor, Texas, just off of Route 10, US 10. I didn't get any video footage of this RV park. It was sandwiched between I-10 and a good-sized lake. I did get a photo of a pretty cool looking swamp buggy or swamp machine. It was parked at the property. We had a late dinner at the Saltgrass Steakhouse right there on I-10. There is a 26-mile section of I-10 known as the Bayou Bridge. Anyone who has driven it knows it can be very tedious driving, if you're in an RV or even a truck pulling a camper. There's only one exit on this 26-mile section, and it has a rest area and a pretty cool swamp heritage museum, which is attached.
It was a solemn and profound moment for me. I faintly realized how great it must have been for them. Yellow, wow, with hammered in my mind,
Your
the fact
swamp
the thing at stake.
with the trees.
And it had got me while I remembered. It might have been only a moment of terror. It might have been my own agitation conjured up such swift and whirling thoughts. But if my mind sometimes played me false, my eyes never had. I thought I saw Diane Simpson dying in Steele's arms. I could have sworn his heart was breaking, and mine was on the point of breaking too.
We're seeing the Zane Grey Star back in Fort Worth. We were talking about who Zane Grey was and his connection to Zanesville, Ohio. And so Debbie picked up an ebook on Zane Grey, and we listened to that for quite a bit of the rest of the trip.
If I had been Steele, I would have forsworn my duty to honor his name.
Wow, look at that sun. Canadian.
Yeah, they don't want you to cross, do they?
They do not want you to cross.
It looks like because I can't.
Turn left onto Louisiana 3177 North, then turn left.
If you like these videos, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you want to keep getting more of these as we produce them. The Atchafalaya Swamp is the largest wetland and swamp in the United States, located in south central Louisiana. It's a combination of wetlands and river delta where the Atchafalaya River and the Gulf of Mexico converge. The museum attached to this rest area is pretty cool. You could spend a half an hour here easily just looking around. Our day wasn't over. We still had another long driving day ahead of us. Our final destination stop for the night was going to be Biloxi, Mississippi. We're going to wrap this video up here and save Biloxi, Mississippi for our next video. I want to thank you all for watching.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful.